Victoria Smock wants to know, how many G-force thingies did you reach in the L-39 jet ride? I reached 4. We had a little G-meter there, and coming around in the climb out on those, we went to a high of 4 Gs. So for probably we're in a pretty long sustained turn, probably 4 or 5 seconds, I weighed 750 pounds there, something like that, which you don't really feel as a weight on you. It's because every single cell in your body gets 4 times heavier. It feels 4 times heavier. It wants to go in a straight line, but the airplane is making you turn, so your cells just want to keep going, and you don't. So a 4G turn is a pretty significant turn, but the highest sustainable turns are 9G turns. The F-15, F-16, F-22, they'll all do probably 12, 13, 14G turn if you really want to before they break. But the pilot blacks out after 9Gs pretty quickly. F-16 has a pilot reclining pretty far back, so the reason you pass out is because if you're in a turn, you feel the weight going downward, and all the blood in your head just rushes out of your head, and you just black out. The blood is forced out of your brain by the G-load. The more you recline, the less that's likely to happen. If you're lying flat on your back, all your blood wants to pool to your back, but not down into your feet. Fighter pilots have something called a G-suit. And back when I was reading about these things, back in the day, they used to call it a poopy suit. And basically, a G-suit is a bit like wading, like fishing pants, like the waders. So they basically just it's like a rubberized thing that fits around your legs and a bit around your waist, and it's hooked up to the airplane's compressed air supply. And when you go into a G-turn, the jet will do this for you. It'll pump air into these things around your waist and constrict your legs, and by constricting your legs, it keeps the blood up high where your brain is. So as you do a sustained G-turn, there's a ways you can get crunching, just breathing, just ways to keep yourself conscious in the turn. And by this G-suit constricting your legs so that all the blood doesn't just flow into your legs, it actually does a pretty good job of keeping you around. A 4G turn is not a bad turn, but a 6G turn is better, and a 9G turn is great. I've probably taken 7, 8 Gs on a, strangely enough, on a amusement park ride, which they don't make anymore, man. Back in the day, I can't believe what they put us through on some of those things. There was a little airplane thing, and those things had 6, 7G turns, and they were just brutal. But 4Gs, I was comfortable as could be. I was just a happy camper at 4Gs. It didn't feel a thing. Still had the strength to hold the GoPro up. My arm probably weighed 100 pounds or something at that point. So the G turns are great. G's are what make people sick sometimes. We went 4Gs high, but on the top of the barrel roll there, we were at, well, not a barrel roll, aileron roll. At the top of that, we were at 0G. We were just, when you see my hands come up like that, it's like we're just like top of a roller coaster, just weightless. It's exhilarating. One thing I found is, if you've ever driven a mountain road or something and gotten car sick, it's almost impossible to get car sick when you're driving. But if you're a passenger, it's much easier. It's true in an airplane too. If you're the person who's inducing the G-force by pulling back on the stick, you have a 1-to-1 relationship. The more I pull back, the heavier I get. The more I push forward, the lighter I get. And so you're controlling it, and some level your brain is processing it. But if you're a passenger and you're pulling a lot of G's or a lot of negative G's, you can get sick pretty easily. So that's why when we fly people who are new, we don't want to G the airplane up. So that's basically the G-force thing. Larry Geary wants to know, how is piloting a plane different from driving a car? I imagine you become one with the plane the way you do with a car, but there's so many more things to think about, and you can't just stop and pull over if something is wrong. So how are they different, and how are they the same? It's a great question, Larry. They're the same in exactly the same way you mentioned. When you've driven a car for a while, you don't think about making a left turn, and you don't go, I need to accelerate, more pressure on the right foot. You just want to go faster, and you do. You just want to turn, and you do. You don't think about it. You're thinking about any number of other things. It's exactly the same way with an airplane. You simply think about going to the right, and you make a right turn, and the more you do it, the more automatic it gets. In that way, they're similar. In another way, they're not. I don't think I'm ever as relaxed. When I say relaxed is not the word I'm looking for. Mindless is probably a better word. in the air as I am on the ground. When I'm on the ground in a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour drive, I'll be thinking about movies. I'll be writing scripts. I'll be doing any number of things, having long conversations on the phone, whatever the case may be. But I've never been that disconnected from an airplane. One of the things we talk about in training, especially in flight training, when somebody gets into trouble behind an airplane, and this is the primary thing that students have a problem with. We'll say that he got behind the airplane, that the airplane was ahead of him or her. Well, why did you, what happened with the landing? Well, I forgot to put the flaps in, or I, flared too early. It's like you're behind the airplane. What that means is your mental state is reacting to what the airplane's doing, and that's not how it should be working. You want to be ahead of the airplane. In other words, your brain is literally, in many ways, your consciousness is 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds ahead of where the airplane is. And you say, okay, I'm going to have to flare when I get down there. So we're doing, okay, so now we're going to start to flare. And by staying ahead of the airplane, you are in command of it in the same way that you're riding a horse rather than being a passenger on a horse that's run away with you. We can do this in a very low consciousness area, but I don't think it's ever completely unconscious. And when you say when something goes wrong, you can't just pull over. That's exactly right. An emergency in the air is a different situation than an emergency on the ground. Now, the good news is there's not that many. In fact, there's very, very few idiots up there. Very few. That's what I like most about aviation, actually, is the people and the commitment to competence, because it can be very dangerous up there if you don't know what you're doing. And so we all like to know what we're doing. That's why pilots are so polite, and that's why of all the things I think surprises most people when they go for their first general aviation ride, they're surprised at how safe it is in terms of how much effort we put into safety. And I've constantly hear comments about how people are surprised at how polite people are. Well, we're very polite because we're professionals, and you have to have worked hard to get into this game. If you're controlling the airplane or if you're at the control tower, you've had to work hard to get to this place. And there's a built-in level of respect that just comes from you being at the controls or in the tower. And we have a lot of respect for each other up there. That's why I like it so much, because we've got to do this right. And I mentioned earlier when I was showing you the video of me flying the jet, how important it was that I hold that altitude. 150 feet, 200 feet off in the first turn in an L-39 that's doing 350 knots is not bad. But I was disappointed in myself. I wanted that altitude stuck. Maybe it's not a realistic expectation, but it's a good goal. One of the little things is, when you're taxiing, you've got the nose wheel of the airplane, you got a little yellow strip down the middle. We don't offset to the side. We go right down the middle of that yellow strip, because when we're on the center line, that's the most clearance the wings have. And I was taxiing as a student, and my flight instructor said to me, Japanese guy named Yaz, sorry. And Yaz said, it's just as easy to taxi on the center line as it is to taxi 2 feet to the right of the center line. I thought, yeah. And so from that point on, I paint the center line. I not only taxi on the center line, I taxi in the middle of the center line. And these things are precision, and not every pilot feels this way, but precision in taxiing means you're precise about everything else. You care about everything. You want to get it right. So the biggest difference, Larry, is you get a sense of euphoria in an airplane. In a car. When you hit the open road, maybe when you accelerate, or just the sense of being free and being out there on alone. You don't get it in traffic. You don't get it going down to get milk at the store. But if you go for a road trip, sometimes you get that kind of sense of euphoria, like, all right, I'm free and I can go. You kind of dabble with it a little bit in cars. And I love to drive. I've got a nice car, and I like to drive fast, and I like driving. I've always liked driving. But you get a taste of it on the road. This feeling is with you 24/7 in the air. It's this perpetual sensation of like, oh my God, I can go anywhere I want to. You see things that no one else sees. You don't realize how weird your neighborhood is until you see it from the air. There's a crook in the 10 freeway. This thing bends 40 degrees. I've driven it for 20 years, and I never realized just how warped it does, what it does to the city until you fly over it. I can't tell you how many things I've seen from the air where it turns out that you've been making this drive every day for your entire life. It turns out there's like a reservoir just behind this little rise that you can't see over. This gigantic body of water you had no idea was out there. Hey, this experience happens to me all the time. There's incredible things that are just out there that you see. And ultimately, Larry, what it really comes down to is just the freedom of the third dimension. Actually, you get two more dimensions, as I said before. When you're on the road, you've got one dimension. You can go forward down the road, backward down the road. That's one dimension of travel. In an airplane, you can move anywhere over the surface, and you can also move up above the surface and lower yourself. And the ability to just say, that hill looks look at that tree up at the top of that hill there 2 miles away. I think I'll go look at that. It's astonishing, really. Really absolutely is. It's amazing to have that sense of being able to go anywhere at any time. That's the thing I like the most. And finally, the thing I'll say about it is flying is, for me anyways, a really weird and wonderful, actually magnificent combination of left brain and right brain. So in order to be a good pilot and a safe pilot, your left brain has to be there. You had to pre-flight at the airplane. You've had to do an enormous amount of studying. You have to have an awful lot of technical information. You have to know how the airplane works. You have to know how the wing works. You have to know how the engine works. Not just cursory. You have to understand that engine. You have to understand the avionics. You have to understand not only how to operate them, but how they work. What principles do they work on? You have to be aware of what the air is doing. A lot of people are concerned about the wind, but most pilots don't think about the wind. I'm a glider pilot. The wind was very important. Lift. Is the air going up? Is the air going down? What's the air doing? Because I'm flying through a mass of air, but that air mass is moving too. And so on some level, it's a very left brain kind of all these things you have to keep track of. But at the same time, it's actually not that at all. When you really, once you get up there, you enter almost like a kind of a Zen state where now it's just pressure. The slightest sensation, it's like, oh, I just feel a little bit of pressure on that left aileron, or I'm 5 degrees off course, and without even thinking, you don't move the stick, you just a little bit more pressure, and everything kind of comes around, and then all of this stuff becomes sort of a second nature, and the seat of the pants is what, when people talk about, the guy's a great stick, he's flying by the seat of his pants. Seat of the pants flying really means those little accelerometers in your ear, Oh, little bump there. Oh, feeling a little bit of, it's so un-left brain. It's so transcendental and intuitive and easy and relaxed. And you become the airplane. And very quickly in your flight training, very quickly, you don't fly the airplane anymore. You are the airplane. That's really what it comes down to. You're the airplane. And you and this is why we love them so much, right? That's why we have such passion towards them, and why we don't consider them toys. Toys demeaning. This machine and you become the same thing. You fuse together. You couldn't do it without it, and it couldn't do it without you. And you become the airplane. And at the same time as you become the airplane disappears because you're no longer conscious of the aircraft. It's your consciousness, your spirit is moving. I want to go over there now. I want to go up there. Oh, look, there's a cloud. I want to circle that. And your hands and your feet do what you need to do to put you anywhere in this three-dimensional space at any speed you want. So really 4 dimensions, actually. I'm in 3 dimensions, and I'm moving at a speed that I want. I want to slow down. I want to go faster. I want to go slower. It's magnificent. And it's only till you've done it that you really appreciate it. And by the way, I've had this experience with many people, and I've never heard anybody contradict me. This may sound odd, but if you're a student pilot and you think about, okay, here comes that day where your first solo flight. Man, I'm going to just do, without the instructor here, how am I ever going to fly? I've never heard anybody disagree with this. You fly so much better without an instructor. Probably not in the first 10 hours or so. But when it's time for you to solo, your first solo flight, I've never heard anybody disagree with this, as I said. On that first solo flight, you will fly so much better than you ever have before, because you haven't realized until that moment what a crutch that instructor is. Something, bump, you turn immediately. I feel like I'm a little high. What should I do? And it's like, you're so used to this. It's so much a part of everything you've ever experienced in the airplane that the instant that guy's not there, or that woman's not there, in case of my instrument rating, the instant they're not there, it's hard to explain because you don't like look over and go, oh crap, there's nobody here, I guess I better solve it myself. You just do. And it's astonishing how much better you fly once that instructor's out of the plane, because we're not using that crutch anymore. It's great. It's tremendous. It's the most amazing experience in the world. If I could take every single one of you flying, I would do it.